Lane, DM2 Software's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Sage Paperless Office webinar. Before I introduce today's presenter, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Because of the number of attendees we have on today's webinar, everyone's phones will stay on mute. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the questions window you see on the lower right of your screen. We'll try to answer everyone's questions at the end of the webinar. If we're unable to get to all of the questions, we'll follow up with each of you individually after the webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. As soon as the recording is available, we will post it on the customer content page of our website and send you an email to let you know when it's available to be downloaded. On that note, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Leanne Lowe. Leanne is a sales engineer with Sage Software, and she's here to give you an overview of Sage's Paperless Office system, which is a standard feature in all Sage 100 ERP systems version 4.3 and later. Take it away, Leanne.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So it's my pleasure. Thank you. It's my pleasure to actually conduct this webinar in Sage Paperless Office. I've been working with the suite of what were previous enhancements of Paperless Office for the past 15 years, and when Sage actually incorporated it as part of the 4.3 version, it provided all customers using Sage 100 the free ability to PDF and save on document management throughout their system. So we'll go over how Sage Paperless Office saves you time, saves you money and frustration. We'll also take a look at some real-life case studies. Paperless Office has been implemented and used by literally hundreds of customers out there. It's delivered and bundled within the product itself, so there's no extra charge to do things such as faxing and emailing of your documents that you use on a daily basis. So we'll go over some cases where some companies have felt the need for Paperless Office and then see what solution and how Paperless Office took care of those needs. And then we'll actually take a look at a demonstration of Paperless Office across several modules. We'll take a look at it within the core modules, such as your accounts payable. We'll also look at it in your distribution module. So how can Paperless Office save you time, especially when it comes to things that you do on a regular basis, such as sending out statements to your customers, sending out sales order acknowledgments or bills of lading, or sales order invoices that you mail out. So think of all the things that you do every day when it comes to paper handling. So with Paperless Office, the savings go beyond just the paper itself. It's also the hardware. So think of the printers and the copiers that you have to keep up to date and maintained, the postage that you're paying to mail those statements and customer invoices to your customers on an almost daily basis. Think of all the recycling, disposal, and even the storage costs. There's also when you're with Sage 100, it can be arguably said that it has one of the best audit trails when it comes to reports and journals and registers. But because it has so many different reports and registers, it can add up to a lot of paper, a lot of time that you're spending as well filing that paperwork. So think of all the ways that you file it away. You may put it in notebooks, you may put it in the filing cabinet, or even just put it in a box and store it in a locked office. But that takes time, and it takes expenses as well to pay the rent for that. So Paperless Office is designed to save you all of that, save you the time it takes to file them away and store that information, as well as the paper savings itself and the space that it takes. So Paperless Office is a secure method for generating and archiving your documents, and it does that through what's called a PDF converter that's built into Sage 100. So you can create your documents automatically in the background without having to do anything else besides your regular process of printing the documents. It will save it to PDF and then make it available to you in a Paperless Office viewer. Alternately, your crystal forms and your documents, such as your invoice forms that are printed as a crystal document, can be saved to PDF as well, and then electronically delivered by email or fax to your customer. And then there's security on several layers built in to Paperless Office to make sure that only those users that should be saving or accessing those reports, registers, and documents can access those properly and open those up. Paperless Office allows you to email documents, as I mentioned, but not just to your customers, but also to your vendors. So you can email your purchase orders, your return orders to your vendors when you need to. This is going to save you some time. You're not having to manually open up your email applications such as Outlook, manually attach a PDF or a document or Word document to your email. With Paperless Office, it's built in, and the email addresses are stored in the master file. So within your vendor maintenance, within your customer maintenance, I'll show you how you can store those and access those email addresses. And then when you want to print your documents, you can add some on-the-fly email addresses. So if on the header of a particular sales order, you want to copy a warehouse person, you can copy them just for that particular order. And the same with job cost invoices and payroll direct deposit stuff. So Paperless Office reaches just about every module within Sage 100, and it makes it that much more useful. So everyone that's on the line, if you're not currently using Paperless Office, I would highly encourage you to start using it. It's built in, and it's very easy to set up and start using. We made it even easier in the current version as well. Paperless Office now the Paperless Office emailing is now going to be available on public servers. So services such as Google Mail, Yahoo, and Hotmail. So this means that you no longer have to maintain your own email server, but you have other options. And then the communication between the client and server can be encrypted, so it protects your sensitive company information. And then Microsoft faxing is supported, so you don't have to go out and sign up for a faxing service. It uses the Microsoft faxing engine that's built into Windows. So you can use the fax services driver built in to the Microsoft Windows and utilize that for sending out your customer invoices, your customer statements, and so there's no additional charge then for the faxing functionality that's built in. And Paperless Office always saves a document to PDF, so whether it's a journal register or whether it's a form that you're printing out, you always have a PDF that you can go back to. So if your customer calls you up and says, could I get that email resent to me or a statement sent to me, you can go into your customer maintenance and click a button and have it resent via email or fax. So you have access within these PDF viewers to all the documents, whether they're internal documents such as your journals and registers. Think of all the pages and pages that's involved with a sales journal and printing that out. All of that can be accessed in a PDF viewer so that different people in your office can see that information. It could be financial reports as well. So if you have a customized Crystal report or Crystal financial report, you can make that available to your managers or executives in the office, so you're not having to print it out and then distribute it manually to the different people in the office. They can all go into a viewer, or the ones that you want to have access to a viewer. Through security within Sage 100 role maintenance, they can see the documents and the reports that they need to see. So it makes it a lot easier as far as distributing those reports to the different employees and people in your office. And then external documents are sent out, and you can optionally print and email. PDFing automatically happens through that PDF converter. So you have the option to have some customers set up so that they have a paper invoice sent out, and then other customers can have their invoice emailed to them. So it works side by side. You can have a mix of some customers being electronic, having electronic delivery, and other customers can have just the regular paper printed invoice and have that occur as you, depending on the setup. And then the Journal and Register Viewer makes all this available, so you can filter, you can sort by either the company, the module, or the individual document itself. So within Paperless Office, you have this nice Journal and Register or period end viewer, and if you have multiple companies, it makes it easy to pinpoint which journal or register or report you're looking at. So remember, all of the reports, even if it's a customized crystal report, can be available within the viewer. And then there's built-in security through different layers. There's the standard Sage 100 task securities and role maintenance that you can set up, so only certain users can view and access the reports. And then there's security events for deleting reports within the viewer. And then even documents that you send outside of Sage 100, for example, let's say you want to send your internal accounts receivable person a secure, encrypted salesperson commission report. So you certainly don't want that commission report to be opened by anybody. So you can attach a password to the individual PDF document itself. So only with the password can the user open it up. So this is also useful for payroll documents such as a check register. So you can encrypt the Adobe document for opening. And then you can also attach a document as well to any journal or register and view that in the paperless viewer. So this is going to be very helpful for cutting down the amount of external documents that you receive. So most of you, I'd say all of you, are going to be receiving in some way, either through usually through the mail, your invoices from your vendors. So a lot of you are going to file those away in a filing cabinet. With associated source documents, you can simply scan those invoices, and I'll show you how to do that within Paperless Office, and then simply attach it to an invoice register. So when you're entering your invoices, you can print your invoice register and then attach the documents. And you can have 100 vendor invoices all in one document. You can use PDF, Adobe PDF, to combine those all to a single document, and then just attach that day's list of invoices to the invoice register. So then when you go back to look at the invoice register, you can see all of the invoices that were paid with that batch of invoices. So that can be accessed at any time within the journal or register viewer. And you can be prompted when you actually print the AP invoice register for that PDF. So it will go out and attach it and grab it. And we have some customers that actually use high-speed scanners to scan that information in. So it's like a copy machine. It'll copy it, it'll scan it, combine it into one single PDF, and then you no longer have to file the paper invoice that you receive from your vendors. So that can, over time, take up a lot of room in filing cabinets. So it's all about reducing paper, not just the paper that Sage 100 generates, but also the paper that you're receiving from your vendors as well. So all those AP invoices take up room in notebooks and filing cabinets and boxes. So we want to give you a way or an option to reduce all of that clutter and simply streamline everything in electronic format, and then give you easy access at your fingertips to that information anytime you need it. Anytime you need to search for it and find it, you have it there. And the Paperless Office Viewer will give you that ability to do that. All of your DM2 supported documents as well can be saved to PDF and viewed in the viewer. So your card link sales journal, your card link daily transaction register, your bill of lading journal, and your bill of lading daily transaction register. All of these documents can be saved to PDF and are viewable within the PDF viewer as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the real-life case studies where Paperless Office has improved practices. So these are situations where the company felt a need for Paperless Office and then benefited from it. So the first case study, and this is a real company that manufactures fiber optic sights for firearms and bows. They're a company called TrueGlow, and their issue was mainly mailing out invoices and quotes. They were mailing out a lot of invoices. It was very costly, very inefficient because they were mailing out paper invoices and paper quotes to their customers. So what they implemented was the Paperless Office electronic forms delivery, and now they email copies of those invoices to the customers, and then they copy all their sales reps on those invoices that are sent out, so it gives them insight into what was sent to the customer. And the payoff was a huge savings on paper. They're no longer having to print out those invoices. Their AR collections is faster because they send out the invoices as soon as it gets printed. Their customers are not waiting in the mail for it. And if their customer says that they didn't receive it, they can just simply click a button and have it emailed to their inbox. So it saves them an estimated over $1,000 every month in postage and FedEx fees for invoice delivery. And they estimated they saved having to print 2,000 invoices. So this is a great savings for TrueGlow. And with Paperless Office, remember, there's no cost to you. It's built in. So any kind of savings you're going to get on the paper, it's all going to be an immediate return on investment for you as soon as you start using it. The other real-life case study where Paperless Office was very useful is the case of Controls International. This is a company that sells and manufactures specialized valves for industrial equipment, and the issue they had was they kept having to acquire more office space, so they had to allocate more offices to store all of the journals and registers. They literally had offices just for storing their paperwork or their filing cabinets for all of the journals, registers, and reports that Sage 100 generated. They also needed to email and fax all of their sales acknowledgments to their customers. So when the customer placed the order, they needed to send that information to them via email. So one of the solutions they had was they implemented Paperless Office and turned on the journals and registers. They also implemented the electronic forms delivery for all of their sales forms. So remember, sales forms can be the sales order acknowledgement, it can be a quote, it can, on the invoice side, it can be even a credit memo. All of those can be emailed to the customer. And if you have any customized forms, such as a customized bill of lading or picking sheet, that can be emailed to either customer or an internal person at your organization. And then for Controls International, it freed up an entire office site that was used to store the documents. So they kept seeing the revenue increase, the paper increase, but they weren't having to allocate more office space because Paperless Office allowed them to electronically file all that information. So they basically got rid of all that office space that was used just to store the filing cabinets and the boxes of the documents. So they saw they were able to increase customer satisfaction by giving them by sending them the order acknowledgments on a timely basis. They were able to increase their efficiency because now they can pull up those documents at any time. So they saw at the same time their revenues went up, their customer service staff actually became more efficient and had the tools that they needed to access the information they needed with the Paperless Office. So we're going to take a look at Paperless Office in action here, and I have it in the current version on the system. The Paperless Office Suite itself hasn't changed much between version 4.3 and the current version, which is 2013. So even if you're using version 4.3 or 4.4, you'll still see the same functionality within Paperless Office. The only main feature we added that was new in 2013 was the ability to not have to maintain a dedicated email server. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. I'm going to switch over to my desktop here. So what you should be seeing is a Paperless Office desktop. And this is what we call a visual process flow. So when I click on one of these icons, I can pull up things such as the customer viewer. So I'm going to show you how first to set this up, and then we're going to take a look at a whole process. And we're going to use actually the menus on my left-hand side to navigate. So the first thing you'll notice when you access Paperless Office is that you have several folders, a main, a utilities, and a setup. The main gives you access to all of your viewers, such as your journal and register viewer, your customer viewer, employee self-service if you have payroll, direct deposit. You have a utilities, and then you have a setup. And it's in setup that you're going to go ahead and turn on exactly which forms, which journal register reports that you want to use. So you would click on Paperless Office Options here to initially tell it which documents to save. So let's go ahead and notice here there's a checkbox. So if you just want your reports but not your forms, you can simply check on the reports. If you want everything saved, then you check that box, and then you can see you have options to load the data on initial viewer access. You also have the option to have the data loaded into the viewers when you click on refresh. And this is important if you have a huge number of documents. You're not having to wait for all those documents to be loaded immediately, so you have instant access to your forms and your reports. And then you also have the option here to either only keep the last PDF copy or keep overwriting it. So let's say you have a daily sales journal and you make a change to it. So you go back and reprint it again, so you can keep every single change that you've made, every single addition, or you can just have it overwrite the last copy. So there's only the final report or the final journal or register that you print out that it keeps and saves to PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that unchecked because I want to keep every single version. And then once I have that accepted, then I can go in, and the setup for the reports such as your journals and registers, your main reports and period end reports is going to be similar. The main difference is for journals and registers, you have the option to have it attach an associated document. So this is what I mentioned earlier about being able to attach scanned AP invoices to an accounts payable register, or you can alternately scan checks. So there are some people who receive checks from their customers and make copies of every single check they receive from their customer and then file that away. You no longer have to do that with Paperless Office. You can simply scan those checks, save it as a PDF, and then attach it to the cash receipts journal. And when you have this set up, in this case I have it set up for AP, I also have it set up for Accounts Receivable. It will prompt you when you print it to attach that scanned document. So again, you can scan 10 different checks, save it as a single PDF and maybe a multi-page PDF, and then attach it electronically to the cash receipts journal. So when you pull up that cash receipts journal again, you see all the scanned checks, and we'll go ahead and see that in the demonstration. So this is the main difference between the setup here of journals and registers and things such as period end and report maintenance. So you notice there's no associated source documents for period end reports. But you do tell it which PDF directory to save it in. You can also tell it whether to auto-create or prompt you. In some cases, I will show you what it will look like when you when you're prompted to PDF. And in a lot of cases, I would just recommend having that set to auto-create, because then you don't get that message that says, do you want to PDF? But if you do have the prompt set up, like I have here in Journal and Register Maintenance, it simply gives you the option to print or not print. But if you have it set to yes, then it prints everything to PDF, and that's very important because maybe a user might forget to save it to PDF. So that way it takes away that having to remember that information and automatically saves everything to PDF. And to view those PDFs, you don't need to go out and buy Adobe PDF or anything. You just need to have the free Adobe Reader, and you can view any of that. And then on the form maintenance here, You can set up your individual forms. For example, if I wanted to create it for a particular company, I could. So it gives you very specific capabilities for setting up the form maintenance. So maybe I just want accounts receivable, and within accounts receivable, I just want my invoice saved to a particular location. So you can enable electronic delivery. You can tell it the from email address. So the from email address is what the customer is going to see. So this could be admin@abc.com. It could be the customer service team that you already have an email set up. The emails are sent directly from Sage 100. So there isn't going to be a send box or anything that you're going to check. When the customer receives the email from Paperless Office, they're receiving it directly from the ERP system, and it uses either your dedicated email server or some SMTP server. And then you can choose to have the location of the PDF stored in a particular shared directory. And then if you want to password protect it, you can. On the additional tab here is some additional options for when you're saving accounts payable checks and remittance advices. So what's nice about Paperless Office and Accounts Payable is it will PDF not just the invoices and registers and the reports on your menus, but it will also PDF a copy of the AP checks. So you, if you happen to make copies of it, you would no longer have to do that. So all of the checks that you cut to your vendors can be saved to PDF, so you can go back and view those at any time. So why would you want a PDF or save a copy? Well, maybe you want to see who it was sent to, or you want to go back in your historical records and have that check available to you at some point, so you can say to your vendor, here's the check that we sent to you, here is a copy of it, so you can prove it was sent and you paid them, and here's a PDF copy of it. And then with Paperless Office, you can email the direct deposit stubs if you have payroll and direct deposit enabled. So all of the forms can be set up by individual module and by document itself, by the individual form. And then on the report maintenance, every single report that Sage 100 generates can be saved to PDF, whether that's a commission report, an inventory turnover report, or it's a sales analysis report, or an aging report. So Paperless Office touches every single report, journal, or register across all different modules. That's why it has such huge potential for saving you time, money, making your reports easy to access. And if you are using Sage 100, there's really no excuse not to use Paperless Office. It's there, and it's easy to set up and start using right away. It can only benefit you for when you start using it. So let's go ahead, and that's the setup once we have that turned on. One last thing I was going to show you is the electronic delivery message maintenance. So you have the ability to set up these templates for how the email is going to look when you send it to your customers or vendors. So even your internal documents, say you want to email a set of sales journals to a department manager, you can specify exactly what the body of the email is going to look like. Now, it doesn't use HTML, so if you want graphics, you're not going to get it, unfortunately, with this electronic delivery message maintenance. It's just basic text here. But what that does is allows you to use merge fields. So what the customer receives is a more customized email address that says, hello, so-and-so, here's your document. If you have any questions, contact our customer service team. So this is your information. You put your website information and follow-up information. So you can put your accounts payable contact team information when you're sending purchase orders to your vendors. You're putting your customer service contact information when you're sending your documents to your customers. And so we'll go ahead. So I have these templates set up. You only have to set them up once, and it immediately will start using it for that particular form. So we'll actually take a look at it, how it will look from the customer and vendor's point of view. So I have my Outlook tied to my Sage 100. So when I send documents outside of Sage 100, I can check my inbox and see those documents there. So what I'm going to do is, what we're going to do here in the demonstration is we're going to actually take a look at Paperless Office in action using your basic tasks. So I'm going to go first into accounts payable. We're going to print an invoice, save it to PDF, and then we're going to print checks and save that to PDF. And then on the purchase order side, we'll simply pull up a purchase order and email that to a vendor, and we'll take a look at what the vendor will see on their side. I will also show you how in accounts payable you can attach your scanned AP invoices to your registers and journals. So I'll use accounts payable as an example here, but remember it works in every single module. So every module that has a report, that has a journal register, can be touched and can utilize the Paperless Office functionality. And then after that, we'll take a look at the distribution side and how you can email copies of your sales order acknowledgments or quotes, your invoices to your customers, and how it will look on that side, and how you can PDF all those journals and registers on the sales order side. So as I mentioned, Sage 100 does a great job of creating an audit trail in the form of the journals and registers, but it does take a lot of paper. So we'll show you an easier way to handle all that paper and manage your documents and archive them in a very organized fashion. So let's first go in accounts payable, and we're going to enter an invoice here and then print an invoice register. And first I'm going to just enter the invoice and just show you the process, and then I'll show you a little background of how you would set up things such as your email addresses within the vendor maintenance, or your customer email addresses within customer maintenance, or the fax numbers themselves. So I'm going to pull up a vendor here. I have a vendor called Stevens Supply, and I'm going to simply create an invoice for him. We'll make it $1,000, and then I'm going to go ahead and print this. And I have the printing set to save to PDF, and also prompt me as well. Remember, when Paperless Office is used, you do want to make sure an actual printer is tied to it, so that will allow you to give you the choice as well to simply print. If you want to print it to file, you can as well, as long as there is an actual printer somewhere in this list here, it'll work. But I've had people simply print to deferred and it will still PDF. So if you want absolutely no paper, simply print to deferred and it will save a copy. So as soon as I click on print, this is where it asks me, do I want to print in PDF format? Now this prompt here I had set to pop up, but I can simply have it remove it also as well. So if I just want to have it PDF automatically, I can have the prompt removed and just automatically PDF. And then what comes up next is the associated PDF. So this is where I'm associating my scanned PDF documents, my scanned AP invoices. So instead of having to file away and store manually in filing boxes or filing cabinets, all of those invoices that you're receiving from your vendor, why not just save them, scan them, save them to a PDF, and then attach them? So in this case here, I have my invoices scanned. They're right here, and I can browse out to it in a particular location that I have it saved to. So I have my invoice, and then all I have to do is click on OK. And the next thing that it does is actually it launches Adobe, and it pulls up the invoice register as a PDF. So once it's as a PDF here, you can do anything that you would normally do, such as do searches. So if you want to search by dollar amount here, you can search information. So it also allows you to search through all these different pages. So there's my recap by division and my AP invoice register saved as a single PDF copy. So what it does is it takes that crystal report and it instantly saves it to PDF. So you can always print the report itself if you wanted to, but in the background it's going to save it to a PDF. So you have this document available within what's called the viewer, and then I'm going to say yes to update that information. I'll also print the daily transaction register and just show you how that gets saved. So all of your DTRs across your different modules in GL, AR, sales order, the daily transaction registers as well can be saved to PDF. So here's my postings. It's opening up in a PDF, and then I'm going to say yes to update it. And then we're going to take a look at the Paperless Office Viewer. So let's take a look at that invoice register and daily transaction register that we just saved to PDF, and we can see that in the Journal and Register Viewer here. And notice here I can filter by company, by module, by document itself, and by accounting date. So I can choose to, instead of having it load, I can click on the refresh and then have all of my documents loaded into here. And if I want to narrow it down just to my accounts payable documents, I can specifically look those up, or I can choose it by module. So let's say just my accounts payable documents I want to show, and I'll just refresh that. So you can easily search by an accounting date for the documents that you want. You'll notice here that there's some columns going across that should give you information such as the journal name, the PDF date it was created, the location in which it was saved. You can click on any of these, such as the date, such as accounting date or PDF created date, and you can sort by that information. So I can click on the column heading and sort it. If I want to take a look at that AP invoice register that I just printed out, AP journal number 22 that was printed out today, which is the 11th here, I can click on this button here to actually open the PDF. So it will allow me to see it at any time. So here's that $1,000 invoice that you saw me enter for Stevens Supply. I can go back to my Journal and Register Viewer and see the attached scanned invoices as well. Since I attached those, I simply highlight the same invoice register, and I click on this button here, which is my Open Associated Document, and that opens my invoices. So then I can see side by side, here's my AP invoice register for Stevens Supply, and here's my invoice for Stevens Supply. So you can do this for multiple invoices. You would simply save all of your invoices as a single document, a PDF document, and then for that day's batch of invoices, you just attach all those invoices to the invoice register. That way you're no longer having to file away this invoice. So this was a paper invoice that I previously had to actually put in a filing cabinet. Now it's a PDF, and anytime I want to view it, I simply pull up that day's invoice register, and I can see the invoice side by side with it. So that will save you time, it'll save you money for looking for that information. It's all in electronic archive form, so it tells you in here, you can see where it was saved to, where the associated PDF was saved to, whether there is an associated PDF, whether it exists. And all this information here respects standard Sage 100 menu security. So if somebody doesn't have access to the accounts payable register, they're not going to be able to pull it up here in the Journal Register Viewer. So you have the standard security, and then you also, under Library Master, we add a number of other options for security under role maintenance. So if you notice under the tasks, we provided the task level. So there's Paperless Office here at the task level. If I unchecked here, you can see Paperless Office. You can choose who has the option to access customer viewer inquiry or be able to electronically deliver message, electronic delivery message maintenance, or form maintenance. You can also, as a security event, control who has access to do things such as delete Paperless Office. So maybe you don't want to have just anybody delete those PDFs within the viewer. So you can choose who has access to delete the documents as well as view them. So you can have your administrator have access to all of this information, but only specific users be able to view things such as customer documents. And then under module options, there's also more security for Paperless Office just individually. So, so keep in mind that if you want to, and by individual I mean by module. So again, if you don't want somebody to go in and do things such as merge batches, you can control that information. So security events and tasks are going to be the two main places where you can you can set up Paperless Office Security, and it's listed on here under its own module. So let's go back to our Paperless Office. So what we took a look at was the ability to PDF the journal and register, attach a source document. Now let's go ahead and pay that invoice. And under check printing, I'm going to show you how you can go through and you can PDF a copy of every single vendor check that you cut within Sage 100. So let's go in and we'll pull up that invoice for Stevens Supply, and we're going to go ahead and pay it. So I'm going to click on Select here, and let's find that invoice for Stevens Supply. So I'll just click Sort it by vendor name, and we want to look for that $1,000 invoice. Here it is for Stevens Supply. And if we want to just go ahead and pay it, let's go ahead and select that and say OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and just print the invoice payment selection register. So we're going to go ahead and print it in PDF because I do have it set to prompt me, and say yes. And here's my invoice payment selection register here, saved as a PDF for Stevens Supply. And we can see the invoice that we're going to pay. Here's my invoice 10008 for $1,000. So we're going to actually, since I get a discount, cut a check for $980. So then all I have to do is click on Yes to print. And from here, I can make sure that the paperless output is PDF. So let's go ahead and just PDF a copy instead of print a paper copy for my vendor Stevens Supply. So then all I have to do is click on Print. So again, when you're in your check printing and your printing selection windows, you want to go to the Paperless Office Output, and this will allow you to select to output it to PDF. So let's go ahead and click on Print, and then print a copy of the check. And then let's print the check register as well, since that will print to PDF. And then we'll close that and update it. So here's my check register, saved as a PDF, and I'll go ahead and update it. And then we'll print the daily transaction register to PDF as well. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at the Paperless Office viewer, and we have a viewer for vendors directly, specifically, versus a customer viewer. So I'm going to go ahead and update that, and let's take a look at the vendor viewer. So that's going to be under Paperless Office, under Main, and we have an option for vendor viewer. So all of the vendor checks that I generate, all of the purchase orders that go to my vendors are going to be available here. So here's my Stevens Supply check. I can see it's check number 3. I can see the location that it was automatically saved to. And even if I wanted to email a copy of the vendor check to the vendor, I can do that. There's an option here for email. So if your vendor says, well, where's the check? You can say it's in the mail, and here's a copy of it, and actually email them a copy of the check. So it proves that it's there. So every single check that you print out of Sage 100 to your vendors can be saved as a PDF and accessible here very quickly and easily. You can highlight the check and see the check. So here's that $980 check. We took the discount and it's saved. So even if you have things such as you modified it with Crystal, so you put your company logo on it, it will PDF it exactly as you sent it to your vendor, or as you printed it out. So there's the vendor viewer. Now let's say I want to send the purchase orders to my vendor as well. So in purchase order, I can go to purchase order entry and pull up a purchase order or enter a new one. I can send it either in purchase order printing or within within my purchase order entry through Quick Print. So I can go to Quick Print, and I can choose my electronic delivery as the method here. And it's going to email it to the email address I set up in vendor maintenance. So all I have to do is choose electronic delivery and click on print. And it prints that out and sends it to the vendor immediately. And it sends it out of Sage 100. And you know if it's sent successfully because it says one was attempted and one was successful. So I can say OK, and then let's go back to vendor maintenance and see exactly where it went, because in vendor maintenance as well as customer maintenance, there's an option here to specify the email address of where you're going to send it, and that's through this paperless button right here on the main tab. So for my document, I can say that my purchase orders go to this email address and to this particular fax number. So if I want to fax it, I can say it goes to this fax number. And the faxes and the email can use the company codes I have set up already. So this email address is going to Susan May, who's my contact at Stevens Supply. And you can choose by document whether you want to have it printed or emailed. So as mentioned before, that you can have side-by-side some vendors set up to only print in PDF the document, like a purchase order or check, and other vendors I can have set up to have their purchase order or check or purchase order emailed to them. So under email, you can use the vendor email on file, or I can do a lookup. And there's no limit to the number of email addresses I can copy. I can have additional email addresses beyond what's in the contact code here as primary contacts. And remember here, when you're setting this up and you're sending it as a purchase order, so let's go back to PO purchase order entry just one more time and pull up that purchase order for Stevens Supply. You can also copy the email address on file here. So this, maybe I have a warehouse person, warehouse at ABC, or if it's a sales order invoice, it's the salesperson. I can copy them just on the fly for this order only. So it's going to email automatically to what's in the vendor master file, but it'll copy an on-the-fly email too. So when I go here to my inbox and take a look at what was sent, here is what your vendor would see. So here's the purchase order that was sent to the vendor. And remember, we used that template that we had predefined, so it actually put in their information. So it's addressing Stevens Supply, it's addressing their order number and order date, and you can have it say whatever you'd like, such as please contact our accounts payable team at such and such number. And when the vendor sees this, checks their inbox, and they'll see an attachment, and all they have to do is open the attachment, and with the Adobe Reader they can see the purchase order that was sent to them. So again, this is going to be applicable for both the customers and the vendor side. It'll work exactly the same way. So let's just take a look at the customer side. So on the sales order, I can email an order acknowledgement or a quote. So I have a quote set up and an email address set up for American Business. So let's just send this sales order. And remember, when I'm sending it, I can send it either through the sales order printing selection or invoice selection here, because you have an option for Paperless Office output for electronically delivering. So I can just send a huge group of 100 quotes or 100 invoices out to all of my customers. Or I can simply just quick print on the sales order itself, or I can quick print a pricking sheet and send it, and choose electronic delivery. And notice that you have a lot of different options. I can choose to print in PDF and electronically deliver, or just print in PDF only. So I'm going to just choose electronic delivery and then say print, and it sends it to the customer. So then it's sending it out. Here's my results. One was successful. I'm going to go ahead now and go into invoice entry, and I'm going to show you an example of sending an invoice. I have actually a credit memo in here for American Business. So what we want to do is we want to email this credit memo to a copy of it to the customer. So this will improve your customer service. You're not having to manually print it out and attach it. All you have to do is click on the quick print, And one thing I want to mention, though, is if you're using shipping data entry and you're invoicing out of shipping data entry, you can still use Paperless Office to send invoices from the shipping data entry options within Sage 100. So then I just click on Print, and it emails a copy of the invoice. So the customer doesn't have to wait in the mail for that invoice. They get it immediately. So the sooner they can put that invoice on their check run or plan it on their next check run, the sooner you're going to get payment from that customer. So it's easy to set this up and send those out right away. You can say yes or say okay here. And let's say your customer calls you up and they say, well, I didn't receive it. Could you resend it to me? So in Accounts Receivable, you can go to Customer Maintenance, and you can access that same viewer within the Invoices tab. So there's this viewer option here, but the paperless viewer you're seeing here only defaults to the American business customer. So you can easily pinpoint, just for this customer, their statement or their invoice. So here's that credit memo. If I want to resend it, I can click on Email. What's nice about here is I can click on Edit Message, and I can attach something. So if I want to attach, say, a contract or a warranty or some information to an order acknowledgement or an invoice, I can do that through the attached email attachment. And what's nice about the attachment is it doesn't have to be a PDF. It can be a Word document or any document that you'd like, and you can simply attach it here and send it to your customer. So I can send this document if I had it set up correctly and then send it. Now you can also change the body as well, and you can fax it by just clicking on the fax. But this is really great for resending emails. I can just click on the make sure I have a from address here, admin@abc.com, and I'll just say resending your credit memo. So just click on the, make sure that this is set up, and then send, and then I've resent that credit memo to them. So what the customer sees when they check their inbox, I'll update this inbox here, is the customer will see this order. So here's the order that was sent from Sage 100. They'll open up their attachment and see the sales order acknowledgement. And remember, you can copy your warehouse person, your salesperson for a sales order. You can set it up so the salesperson for this customer is always copied on orders that are sent out, or quotes that are sent out as well. And then you can, when the customer sees, here's the invoice that was sent out of Sage 100, so they can open that up and see invoices or credit memos that were sent. So this is going to speed up the time that your customers take to receive those documents. And it's not just credit memos and order acknowledgments, but you can also send statements. So if I go to Accounts Receivable, let's pull up Customer Maintenance. You can also do this within statement printing as well, but I'll show you an example here in Invoice. When I go to actually print the statement, I'll click on the Print Statement here. You can have the option to electronically deliver. So all those statements that you're now printing out, stuffing in envelopes, putting a postage stamp on, you don't need to do that with Paperless Office. You simply use electronic delivery setup, and you just email that to them, and that saves you paper, it saves you time and stuffing envelopes, and the biggest savings is going to be the postage. You're not actually having to pay for all those stamps. So then customers can receive their statements, and here's my result here of the statement that was sent out. When they check their inbox, they'll see the statement that came through. So here's the statement. When they check, so Susan May checks her statement. She's with American Business as well as Stevens Supply, and she sees all of her statement information sent as an electronic form. One last thing I wanted to show you is the ability to attach documents on the Accounts Receivable side. So in Accounts Receivable, I can pull up my customer viewer here. So it's not just your accounts payable documents that can have an associated document, but also your customer document. So in accounts, if I pull up accounts receivable, let's pull up a cash receipts journal that I had printed out before. So here's my cash receipts journal. I can view it. I can see it as a PDF. But if I go back to that window here within my journal and register viewer, I can also click on the attached checks. So the checks that I received from the customer and I scanned, as you can see here, I can see side by side. Here is my cash receipts journal. Let's close that up. Here's my cash receipts journal, and here is my scanned copies of my checks that I received from my customer. So I don't have to make copies of these. If you happen to be making copy of those, you can just see those here. And all of the reports in Sage 100 can be saved to PDF, whether it's an AR aged invoice report. So you have this report viewer as well under the Paperless Office main. So I can go to my report viewer and I can see things such as my commission report, my scanned, here's my aged invoice report. So I can go back and view my aging at any time as a PDF. So here's access to the aging, but also my salesperson commission report. So this allows you to distribute those reports very quickly and easily. So, and you can password protect it. So when I try and open up that document, it has a password attached to it. So it's going to prompt me for the password before I can open up. And if you have sensitive information, like on a commission report, you don't want just anybody to have access to who gets paid what commission. So you can password protect that too. And that's optional by document. And then one of the biggest features is going to be just being able to save all of that paper, especially with the daily sales reports. As you know, when you're printing out your daily sales report, there's a lot of paper that gets generated. You have your gross profit journals, you have your daily transaction register, so you can just say, print it all in PDF, and then save it for me. And that way, when you want to distribute things such as your recap reports, you're not actually having to distribute paper copies. If somebody wants to see the daily sales for the previous day, all they need to do is go into the viewer, and all your daily sales reports are there. And what you're seeing right now is all the daily sales reports being printed to PDF and accessible within the viewer. So if I go back to my journal and register viewer, let's sort it by sales order. And here's my daily sales journal. And let's say no to update here. And let's go back to sales order, and we'll filter it by my sales journal here. So here's my sales journal, my daily sales reports. I can see those in PDF. So notice I just had a few invoices here, but it already took up 13 pages. This can easily take up dozens, if not hundreds of pages if you have a lot of invoices that you're updating. All of this can be saved to PDF. Save yourself some time on having to file those manually, and just electronically file them and make them available here in the Journal and Register viewer. So I'm going to wrap up here. So that's the demonstration of Paperless Office that I wanted to show you. Paperless Office, as you can see, is very powerful, very useful. I'm going to turn things back to Tom in order to talk about what's coming up in the next webinar.
All right, nice job, Leanne. Thank you very much. As we normally do with our webinars, we always promote the next month's webinar. And next month is Go Mobile. And this webinar is going to teach you how to easily and inexpensively access all of your ERP financial information, your customer relationship management information, and business intelligence information using your mobile devices. There's things you can do right now without any special software, and we're going to talk about the benefits of going mobile. We're going to talk about some of the different hardware, smartphone and tablet platforms that we support, and then tell you how you can get going with that. So we'll be sending out an invitation to that webinar shortly after this webinar is over. On that note, I'd like to open it up to any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat window right now. Why don't we give it a minute, and if we don't have any questions, we'll wrap things up here. But once again, very nice job, Leanne, very thorough.
Oh, you're welcome.
And just to remind everyone, that is functionality that you'll find in every Sage 100 ERP system version 4.3 and later. So those are things that you can start doing immediately. All right, it doesn't look like we're going to get any questions today. I think that's a testimonial to how thorough you did, Leanne. By all means, if anyone has any questions after the webinar is over, please feel free to email them to sales@dm2.com. And I just want to remind everybody that today's webinar has been recorded. Once the recording is available, we'll post it along with a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation on the customer content page of our website, and we'll send you an email to let you know when it's available to be downloaded. I'd like to thank Leanne again, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's Sage Paperless Office webinar. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much.